Hello. I fell in love with my brother-in-law and unintentionally caused his marriage to fall apart. I've been deeply in love with my brother-in-law Mike for 5 years now, and although I've always hidden it from him, I think he always knew. One night, while he and I were cleaning up after a party, he confessed his love for me and told me to stop pretending I don't love him too. As soon as he said that, my brain short-circuited as I tried to process this. Eventually, I told him he was just drunk and needed to go to bed because I wasn't about to physically cheat on my husband, Jim. However, I cried for weeks afterward, and when Jim saw that I was sad, he was very concerned and so nice to me, which made me cry even more. The guilt was so physically painful I developed ulcers. This happened last summer, and ever since I've tried to avoid seeing my sister-in-law Laura and Mike. Soon Jim was irritated with me because of this, accusing me of not liking his sister or her husband. Laura called a few times to wonder why I'm not showing up and visiting them as frequently now. She started saying that I wanted to come between her and her brother because I never liked their closeness. So what I did to combat this was go to the dinners and ignore Mike altogether. Well, this didn't satisfy Laura, so she started thinking I hated them. This was truly eating me alive, and I spent many nights silently crying and looking at myself in the mirror like a monster. But then luck struck me, and Jim got a new job offer in a city that's 20 hours away. I want him to take it, but it's in a very small town, and he is surprised that I, a renowned city girl, want to move to a small town. I don't know what to do. I want Jim to take this job, but I don't know how to convince him. Mike texted me, begging me not to do it, and he promised not to bother me again, but just not to move away. That doesn't sit well with me. I had a talk again with Jim about the job in the little town. I told him that I wanted the new adventure, especially when it came with a 25% increase in his salary and a higher-up position. Jim has been complaining about how he isn't advancing in his career in our city. I told him that this could be the step he needed. I'm a nurse, and I could easily find jobs anywhere we went because there is a shortage of healthcare staff everywhere. The idea started to grow on him. He was skeptical because of the distance from our families, but he was intrigued. He booked a job interview that is supposed to happen on Wednesday. If he takes the job, we would be relocating around New Year. I was so hopeful that I could finally breathe. Today is Sunday, and it was usually the day we meet up with family for dinner. This didn't happen this week, however, and I'm spending the Sunday alone. Jim is staying with his sister because earlier this week Mike broke the news to her that he wanted a divorce. Laura is beside herself with shock, and Jim is there to try and mediate between her and Mike. Mike is refusing to talk to any of them and has only been there twice to see the kids. Jim told me now that he couldn't take this job because he needed to stay here and support his sister. I understand where he is coming from, but for me all the horror and anxiety is back. I can't tell Jim my true reasons. I have tried so many times, but I just can't do it. I love him so much, and I know him very well. He will be hurt and devastated. When Jim told me he was not taking the job up north because of Laura's marital problems, I understood that and was supportive. We have always been close to Laura, and Jim loves his sister and her children. I always admired their bond because I was never this close to my family. He stopped spending weekends with me and instead stayed with Laura and the children, and even several days a week when he didn't even text me after work that he was spending the evening with the children. I didn't mind it because this is all new, and Laura isn't coping well after the separation. I told Jim that I missed him, though, and that I wanted to be with him, and maybe I should tag along some days. He said that I was being selfish for wanting the attention now. His sister needed the support, and I should be more understanding. She and Mike have been together since they were very young, and she wasn't adjusting well to these new changes. I felt horrible and so selfish. I thought that I should be supportive. Every Christmas on Boxing Day, Jim and I travel somewhere warm and spend 2 to 3 weeks. It has been our tradition since we met, and we booked this trip months in advance. Yesterday, when I was talking about our trip, Jim was so surprised. He said that he was astonished that I thought we would just go on with our plans when his sister's life was turned upside down. I told him that this was our thing and that his sister has her own family. I wanted my family him. I told him that I fully understood that she needs his support, but that I've been very lonely lately. He told me to drop the subject. Today I chatted with the travel agency to see if I could add Laura and her children. I thought that maybe it would be a good change of climate. Well, they would have to take a separate flight, but other than that, it was possible even with such short notice to add them. So I called Jim to tell him the news. He was very excited. When he came home later, he told me that Laura didn't agree, however, so we are staying. I asked him why, and he said that she didn't want to be around happy couples right now. I did all I could do to hold back my tears. When Jim got that job offer in the small town up north, I started browsing job opportunities, and I sent my CV around. One hospital answered me a week ago. I think I want to take the job. After what happened today, I just logged in and made an appointment for a job interview. I know that Laura is hurting and that Jim is admirable for being there for her. This is all just so new for everyone and a big life change for Laura and her children. But I feel like I'm number 2 in my own life. I feel neglected and like I have the supporting role in my own movie. I'm leaving Jim. I'm taking the new job, and I will go with the plans and move to that small town and get away from everything and everyone. I think I need this new start. Judge me all you want. I know you will. I did a lot of thinking about this entire mess. I tried speaking to Jim about it seriously once. I brought it up a few times in passing over the last little while, but tried to have a very serious talk just once. It was late at night, and I told him to please listen to me and not interrupt. In fairness, he did that, and so I opened up to him about how he was always running around for his sister Laura, and how he literally does not care that he is neglecting me. It made me feel like I was very much behind her on his priority list, and that I should never have to feel like that as his wife. I still didn't tell him about the Mike situation, though, as I'm actually pleased to report that I have lost a lot of the feelings I had for him. I guess I indirectly blamed him for taking my husband away by leaving his wife, but whatever it was, my feelings have significantly decreased. Anyway, after explaining how I felt to Jim, he gave me a hug. I thought I was getting somewhere, but then he let go and told me that he understands, but his sister is his sister, and I have to accept that he will be there for her as much as she needs, no matter how it makes me feel. That made me feel like crap. I love him, but I can't do it anymore, and so I spoke to him again before he went to see Laura. I told him in one last-ditch attempt that he has known for months now that I'm unhappy, and that I wanted to leave this city. I told him that I couldn't do it anymore, and I apologized for choosing this very inconvenient time when his sister is suffering, but that I couldn't do it anymore. He looked at me, silent, and the disappointment in his eyes just broke me. He said that he couldn't believe that I have no compassion whatsoever when a family member is suffering, and yet I still want to go about my life as usual. Would the world end if we skipped our tradition once when he is needed somewhere else? I started crying because I couldn't reach out to him, and yes, if simplified, he is in the right. This looks like me sulking about a trip. I told him that I couldn't do this anymore. We are talking past each other, and none of us wants to understand the other. He left. He texted me now that he never thought of me as being selfish, and that I should do what I see fit. He will not stand in my way. I don't know if he will be coming back. I have moved away and got a job in the new town. The hospital offers rooms for rent for nurses, something I'm considering looking into. They usually offer this opportunity when they need people to start right away, and me accepting this without hesitation made me understand how done I am with everything with my life here. I'd rather live in a small room, maybe even share it with another nurse, rather than staying here. I literally feel like the walls are closing in on me here and I can't breathe. Maybe I can buy my own place eventually now that prices have gone down. I have told my family about my decision. I have never been close to them, and I don't think they understand my decision, but I hope in time they do when they see that I'm happier. My friend, who I've been living with for the majority of these past weeks, is more understanding. Jim didn't talk to me the first weeks after I moved out. I think it's because he's been busy with Laura, but also because of anger and hurt. He called me the day before Christmas Eve, however. He was feeling lonely because Laura and the children found a last-minute trip to Egypt with her best friend and her children. They're coming home before school starts again. I told him to come for Christmas dinner with my family. It was a bit confusing for my parents that he was there after I said I was separating, but I just couldn't let him be alone. He asked me if I could move back home and wait with the move until he is ready so we both could move. Also, we should go on our annual trip because it was a waste throwing $8,000 away. I told him that I had given away the trip to my friend who took me in these past few weeks. He admitted that we had problems and that we needed help. I felt like he was genuinely sad and desperate to make it work between us, but to be honest, I don't think I want that anymore. I feel like that ship has sailed. At least I need to be alone for a while before deciding if I want to be married to him anymore. I told him that I wanted separation and to work from there. He was crying the whole time, and so was I, but I stood by my decision. He texted me later that he's always loved me. I'm the love of his life, and that he will do anything to make me happy again, even if it meant letting me go. I feel excited for the new chapter, but there's a lot of pain in my heart at the same time. I love Jim, and I'm so scared that I'm making a big mistake. I did a lot of thinking about this entire mess. I tried speaking to Jim about it seriously once. I brought it up a few times in passing over the last little while, but tried to have a very serious talk just once. It was late at night, and I told him to please listen to me and not interrupt. In fairness, he did that, and so I opened up to him about how he was always running around for his sister Laura, and how he literally does not care that he is neglecting me. It made me feel like I was very much behind her on his priority list, and that I should never have to feel like that as his wife. I still didn't tell him about the Mike situation, though, as I'm actually pleased to report that I've lost a lot of the feelings I had for him. I guess I indirectly blamed him for taking my husband away by leaving his wife, but whatever it was, my feelings have significantly decreased. Anyway, after explaining how I felt to Jim, he gave me a hug. I thought I was getting somewhere, but then he let go and told me that he understands. But his sister is his sister, and I have to accept that he will be there for her as much as she needs, no matter how it makes me feel. That made me feel like crap. I love him, but I can't do it anymore. And so I spoke to him again before he went to see Laura. I told him in one last-ditch attempt that he has known for months now that I'm unhappy and that I wanted to leave this city. I told him that I couldn't do it anymore, and I apologized for choosing this very inconvenient time when his sister is suffering, but that I couldn't do it anymore. He looked at me, silent, and the disappointment in his eyes just broke me. He said that he couldn't believe that I have no compassion whatsoever when a family member is suffering, and yet I still want to go about my life as usual. Would the world end if we skipped our tradition once when he is needed somewhere else? I started crying because I couldn't reach out to him, and yes, if simplified, he is in the right. This looks like me sulking about a trip. I told him that I couldn't do this anymore. We are talking past each other, and none of us wants to understand the other. He left. He texted me now that he never thought of me as being selfish and that I should do what I see fit. He will not stand in my way. I don't know if he will be coming back. I have moved away and got a job in the new town. The hospital offers rooms for rent for nurses, something I'm considering looking into. They usually offer this opportunity when they need people to start right away, and me accepting this without hesitation made me understand how done I am with everything with my life here. I'd rather live in a small room, maybe even share it with another nurse, rather than staying here. I literally feel like the walls are closing in on me here, and I can't breathe. Maybe I can buy my own place eventually now that prices have gone down. I have told my family about my decision. I have never been close to them, and I don't think they understand my decision, but I hope in time they do when they see that I'm happier. My friend, who I've been living with for the majority of these past weeks, is more understanding. Jim didn't talk to me the first weeks after I moved out. I think it's because he's been busy with Laura, but also because of anger and hurt. He called me the day before Christmas Eve, however. He was feeling lonely because Laura and the children found a last-minute trip to Egypt with her best friend and her children. They're coming home before school starts again. I told him to come for Christmas dinner with my family. It was a bit confusing for my parents that he was there after I said I was separating, but I just couldn't let him be alone. He asked me if I could move back home and wait with the move until he is ready so we both could move. Also, we should go on our annual trip because it was a waste throwing $8,000 away. I told him that I had given away the trip to my friend who took me in these past few weeks. He admitted that we had problems and that we needed help. I felt like he was genuinely sad and desperate to make it work between us. But to be honest, I don't think I want that anymore. I feel like that ship has sailed. At least I need to be alone for a while before deciding if I want to be married to him anymore. I told him that I wanted separation and to work from there. He was crying the whole time, and so was I, but I stood by my decision. He texted me later that he's always loved me, I'm the love of his life, and that he will do anything to make me happy again, even if it meant letting me go. I feel excited for the new chapter, but there's a lot of pain in my heart at the same time. I love Jim, and I'm so scared that I'm making a big mistake. I love my new town. I have noticed that my health is improving rapidly. I'm not losing hair as much, and I haven't lost any weight either. My ulcers are still a big nuisance, but I'm getting treatment. Jim and I have decided on a separation. I have adamantly refused to let him move here with me, and he was very angry at first, but he knew that now I could just stop talking to him completely if he is being disrespectful or trying to pressure me in any way. So he is trying not to upset me. I know it in my heart of hearts that I don't want to be with him anymore. I miss him, yes, and it breaks my heart that he is hurt, but I feel so much more freedom and happiness that I haven't in years that I could cry when I think of how much better off I am now. I told him the truth, but he still insists that a trial separation is a good start. I don't know. I dream about sex and how much I have missed it. Only now do I realize how much I need it in my life. However, one thing I will say that is extremely annoying is that I once again developed feelings for Mike. And I have once again started fantasizing about him a lot. But I'm so relieved that he is so far away. Out of sight, out of mind, or that's at least what I'm hoping for. He called me a week after I moved here, wished me a Happy New Year, and said he was sorry that my marriage was ending. He apologized if he had any part in it. I denied it, more lies. But I have decided to bury this whole thing down in my heart. My heart is nobody's business but mine, and these feelings are my innermost private feelings that nobody is entitled to. He was so kind and gentle, however, and I cried during the whole phone call and even more afterward. He seemed to be more optimistic and happy about his future, too, on that phone call. He talked more than I ever heard him talk in all these years I've known him combined. And there was something else in his voice that I couldn't put my finger on, but that gave me happiness. He never brought up his confession or his apology afterward. Probably he didn't want to make things awkward, and I'm thankful for that. Jim visited me once unannounced, and I didn't appreciate it, to be honest. He stayed the whole weekend. He had a falling out with Laura because she was angry that he insinuated that she was the reason her husband left her. I totally disagree with Jim. Nobody is the reason why somebody leaves. Life is hard enough as it is without us blaming each other for why it is this hard. People fall out of love, and it is no specific person's fault. But anyway, Laura doesn't speak to Jim now. I felt so sorry for him, but I know they love each other and will reconcile. As for us, I realized that waiting for Jim to come to terms with our separation wasn't ideal. I've made more progress than him because he's still in the "we can work through this" phase. I told him that I wasn't going back to him, and still, he thought all I needed was time. I told him that I was filing for divorce, and he didn't take me seriously. I signed and sent him the papers this last Monday. He has not contacted me yet, but I received notification that he got the papers. He can drag the divorce for a couple of years tops if he refuses to sign. When he was here visiting, I realized that I didn't have any romantic feelings nor attraction to him anymore. Maybe I haven't had in years, really, but I still love him more than any human on this earth. Does this make any sense? Do you feel this way? I saved this for last, but I have been talking on Hinge to someone. I am not looking for anything serious. I don't want to be in a relationship for a very long time. This man is also in a somewhat similar situation, newly separated, and isn't looking. I met him on Wednesday, and we didn't even make it to dinner. It felt so weird, but God, it was so amazing. I'm meeting him this weekend, all weekend. I don't want to do anything but have intimacy. As the weekend approached, I felt a mix of excitement and guilt. Here I was, about to spend an entire weekend with a man I barely knew, while my soon-to-be ex-husband Jim was probably sitting alone, feeling miserable. But I needed this. I needed to feel wanted and to escape from the mess my life had become. When Friday finally came, I met up with Tom, the guy from Hinge. We decided to spend the weekend exploring the town and just enjoying each other's company. We started with dinner at a cozy little restaurant. The conversation flowed effortlessly, and I found myself laughing more than I had in years. Tom was charming, attentive, and made me feel like the center of the universe. After dinner, we walked through the town, stopping by a local bar for a few drinks. The night ended with us back at my place, where things quickly got heated. It was passionate, and for the first time in a long while, I felt alive. The next morning, we had breakfast at a quaint cafe. Tom was sweet, holding my hand across the table and making jokes that kept me smiling. We spent the day hiking, exploring the beautiful scenery that my new town had to offer. As we reached the top of a hill overlooking the vast expanse of nature, I felt a sense of peace. This was where I belonged, far away from the chaos of my old life. Meanwhile, Jim had texted me a few times, but I ignored his messages. I needed this break, and I couldn't deal with his emotions right now. I knew it was selfish, but I had to prioritize my own happiness for once. Tom and I spent the evening at a local festival, enjoying the music, food, and atmosphere. It was perfect. That night, back at my place, we talked for hours, sharing our life stories and dreams. It felt like I had known him forever. Sunday came too soon. We spent the morning lounging around enjoying each other's company before he had to leave. As he walked out the door, he promised to keep in touch and visit again soon. I knew this wasn't going to be a long-term thing, but it was exactly what I needed at that moment. I felt a pang of sadness as he left, but also a renewed sense of hope for the future. Later that day, I finally responded to Jim's messages. He was worried, asking if everything was okay. I assured him that I was fine but needed some space. He didn't take it well, accusing me of being distant and uncaring. It was the same argument we had been having for months. I couldn't do it anymore. I told him that I needed to focus on myself and that he should do the same. The following week, I threw myself into my new job at the hospital. It was challenging, but I loved it. The staff was friendly, and I felt like I was making a real difference. Jim continued to try and reach out, but I kept my responses short and to the point. I needed to break free from him, and that wasn't going to happen if I kept getting pulled back into his drama. Laura, on the other hand, had reached out to me a few times, trying to patch things up. I felt a mix of resentment and pity for her. She had always been so demanding, so self-centered, but she was also going through a tough time. I decided to meet up with her for coffee, just to clear the air. The conversation was awkward at first, but we eventually found some common ground. She apologized for being harsh, and I told her I needed space from the family drama. She seemed to understand, but I knew it was going to take time for things to really heal. As the days turned into weeks, I started to find my rhythm. The new town felt like home, and I was happier than I had been in years. I still thought about Mike occasionally, but the distance made it easier to push those thoughts aside. Tom and I kept in touch, and he visited a few more times, but I knew it wasn't going to be a long-term relationship. It was fun while it lasted, and it helped me move on. One evening, as I was settling into my new routine, I received a call from Jim. He sounded different, more resigned. He told me that he had signed the divorce papers and wanted to meet up to discuss the final details. I agreed, knowing it was time to close that chapter of my life. When we met, there were no arguments, no accusations. Just two people who had grown apart and were finally ready to let go. As I walked away from that meeting, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. It was time to focus on my future and embrace the new life I had started to build. I didn't know what was next, but for the first time in a long while, I was excited to find out. After meeting Jim and finalizing the divorce details, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It was like I could finally breathe again. I returned to my small apartment in the new town and sat on the couch, staring at the walls that had become my sanctuary. I knew this was a turning point, a chance to rebuild my life without the shadows of my past holding me back. A few days later, Tom texted me, asking if I wanted to meet up again. I hesitated. While our time together had been fun and freeing, I wasn't sure if I wanted to keep seeing him. But then I thought about how much I enjoyed his company, and I agreed to meet him for dinner. We met at a new restaurant in town, a cozy place with dim lighting and a relaxed atmosphere. As soon as I saw him, I felt a sense of comfort. We talked about our weeks, shared stories, and laughed over silly things. Tom had a way of making me forget about all the stress and drama. He made me feel like I was the only person in the world that mattered. After dinner, we went for a walk along the river. The night was cool and the stars were out, twinkling above us like tiny diamonds. As we walked, Tom took my hand, and I felt a spark of something I hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't just attraction. It was hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, I could find happiness again. The next few weeks flew by. Work was busy but fulfilling, and my relationship with Tom continued to grow. He was supportive, always there when I needed him, but he also gave me space when I needed to be alone. It was a balance I hadn't experienced before, and I found myself falling for him more each day. Laura, on the other hand, was not as easy to deal with. She kept calling, demanding to know why I wasn't visiting more often and accusing me of abandoning the family. I tried to explain that I needed to focus on my own life for a while, but she wouldn't listen. Her calls became more frequent and more aggressive, and I found myself dreading the sound of my phone ringing. One evening, after a particularly nasty call from Laura, I broke down. Tom found me crying on the couch and pulled me into his arms. "You don't have to deal with her alone," he said softly. "Let me help." I nodded, grateful for his support. Together, we came up with a plan to set boundaries with Laura. I would limit my calls to once a week, and if she became too aggressive, I would end the call. It was tough at first, but eventually Laura started to back off. She didn't like it, but she had no choice. With Laura somewhat under control, I started to feel more at ease. My new life was starting to take shape, and I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. Tom and I continued to grow closer, and I began to think that maybe he was the one I had been waiting for all along. One weekend, Tom surprised me with a trip to the mountains. He knew how much I loved nature, and he thought a weekend getaway would be the perfect way to relax and unwind. The cabin he rented was beautiful, nestled in the woods with a stunning view of the mountains. We spent our days hiking, exploring, and just enjoying each other's company. On the last night of our trip, we sat by the fireplace, wrapped in blankets and sipping hot cocoa. Tom looked at me, his eyes filled with warmth and affection. "I know we've only been seeing each other for a short time," he said, "but I feel like I've known you forever. I can't imagine my life without you." Tears filled my eyes as I realized how much he meant to me. "I feel the same way," I whispered. "You've brought so much joy into my life, and I can't thank you enough for that." He smiled and leaned in to kiss me, and at that moment I knew I had found something special, something worth fighting for. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly happy. Back in town, things continued to improve. Work was going well. My relationship with Tom was stronger than ever, and I finally felt like I was in control of my own life. Laura still tried to interfere from time to time, but I was better equipped to handle her now. I had found my voice, and I wasn't afraid to use it. Jim had also started to move on. He reached out a few times, apologizing for how things had ended and wishing me the best. I appreciated his gestures, but I knew that chapter of my life was over. It was time to focus on the future. As the months passed, I continued to build my new life. I made new friends, found new hobbies, and continued to grow both personally and professionally. Tom was by my side through it all, supporting me and cheering me on. I felt like I had finally found my place in the world, and I was excited to see what the future held. One evening, as Tom and I sat on the porch of my apartment, watching the sunset, he took my hand and said, "I have something to ask you." I turned to him, curious. "What is it?" He took a deep breath and looked into my eyes. "I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me?" Tears filled my eyes as I realized how much I wanted the same thing. "Yes," I whispered. "Yes, I will." As he slipped the ring onto my finger, I felt a sense of completeness I had never felt before. I had found my happily ever after, and I couldn't wait to start this new chapter with the man I loved. As the weeks rolled by, preparations for the wedding kept us busy. Tom and I spent weekends picking out venues, tasting cakes, and going through endless options for decorations. I couldn't believe how smoothly everything was going. Life was finally falling into place. One afternoon, I got a call from my ex-wife, Diane. I hesitated before answering, knowing that any conversation with her was bound to be filled with drama. "Hello?" I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. "Danny, we need to talk," Diane said sharply. "I've heard about your engagement, and I have a few things to say." I sighed, bracing myself for whatever she had to throw at me. "What is it, Diane?" "I can't believe you're already moving on. It's only been a few months since our divorce was finalized," she said, her voice dripping with contempt. "Don't you think it's a bit too soon?" "Diane, we both knew our marriage was over long before the papers were signed. I've found someone who makes me happy, and I'm not going to apologize for that," I replied, trying to keep my cool. "Oh, please, don't act like the victim here. You're the one who destroyed our marriage," she snapped. "Diane, I'm not going to argue with you. What's done is done. I've moved on, and you should too," I said firmly. "Fine, but don't expect me to be happy for you," she spat before hanging up. I put the phone down, feeling a mix of anger and relief. Diane had always been good at pushing my buttons, but I wasn't going to let her ruin my happiness with Tom. The next day, Tom and I met with the wedding planner to finalize some details. As we sat in the office going over flower arrangements and seating charts, I couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement. This was really happening. Later that evening, Tom and I were relaxing at home when my phone rang again. It was Diane. I groaned inwardly but decided to answer, hoping to keep the conversation short. "What is it, Diane?" "I just wanted to let you know that I'm coming to the wedding," she said, her tone surprisingly calm. "What? Why?" I asked, taken aback. "Because I deserve to see this train wreck in person," she said with a bitter laugh. "And besides, I think Tom should know what he's getting himself into." "Diane, this is ridiculous. You have no reason to be there," I said, feeling my frustration rise. "Oh, I have plenty of reasons, Danny. I'll see you at the wedding," she said before hanging up. I looked at Tom, who had been listening to my side of the conversation. "What did she say?" he asked, concern etched on his face. "She's planning on coming to the wedding," I said, running a hand through my hair. "I don't know what she's up to, but it can't be good." Tom sighed and wrapped his arms around me. "We'll deal with it together. She can't ruin this for us." In the weeks leading up to the wedding, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Diane's threat hung over me like a dark cloud, but Tom's unwavering support kept me grounded. We continued with our plans, determined not to let her spoil our special day. The day of the wedding finally arrived, and everything was perfect. The sun was shining, the flowers were beautiful, and our friends and family were all there to celebrate with us. As I stood at the altar waiting for Tom, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. Tom walked down the aisle, looking as handsome as ever. When he reached me, he took my hands and smiled, and all my worries melted away. The ceremony was beautiful, and as we exchanged vows, I knew that I had found my true partner in life. Just as we were about to exchange rings, I saw Diane standing at the back of the crowd, a smirk on her face. My heart skipped a beat, but I forced myself to focus on Tom. This was our moment, and I wasn't going to let her ruin it. We finished the ceremony, and as we walked back down the aisle, I whispered to Tom, "Diane's here." He squeezed my hand and nodded. "I saw her. Let's just enjoy our day, and we'll deal with her later." The reception was a blur of laughter, dancing, and toasts. Diane kept her distance, but I could feel her eyes on us the whole time. Finally, as the night was winding down, she approached us. "Congratulations," she said, her voice laced with sarcasm. "I hope you're happy together." "We are," I replied, meeting her gaze. "Now, if you'll excuse us, we have a party to enjoy." Diane glared at me but said nothing more. She turned and walked away, leaving us to celebrate the rest of the night in peace. As Tom and I shared our first dance, I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. Despite all the challenges and the drama with Diane, I had found my happiness, and I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me. The reception continued with laughter, dancing, and toasts. Everyone was enjoying themselves, and it felt like a true celebration of our love. But I couldn't shake the feeling that Diane was still lurking in the background, waiting for an opportunity to cause trouble. After our first dance, Tom and I mingled with our guests, thanking them for coming and sharing in our happiness. I noticed Diane standing by the bar, watching us with a sour expression. I decided to confront her and get it over with. "Hey, Diane," I said, approaching her. "Can we talk for a moment?" She raised an eyebrow and smirked. "Sure, Danny. What do you want to talk about?" "Look, I know you're upset, but this is our wedding day. Can't you just let us have this one night without causing a scene?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Diane rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. I'm not here to cause a scene. I'm just here to see if you really think this is going to work out." "It is working out," I said firmly. "Tom and I are happy together. I wish you could just accept that and move on." She scoffed. "You think you can just erase everything we've been through and start over with him? It's not that simple, Danny." "I'm not trying to erase anything, Diane. I'm just trying to build a new life. I hope you can find happiness too," I replied, feeling a mix of pity and frustration. She looked at me for a long moment, then sighed. "Maybe you're right. Maybe I need to let go. But it's hard, you know." "I know," I said softly. "But holding on to the past won't help either of us. Let's try to move forward." Diane nodded reluctantly. "Fine, I'll leave you two alone, but don't expect me to be happy about it." "That's all I ask," I said, giving her a small, hopeful smile. She turned and walked away, and I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I returned to Tom, who was talking with some friends. "Everything okay?" he asked, concern in his eyes. "Yeah, everything's fine," I said, wrapping my arms around him. "I think Diane is finally going to let us be." Tom smiled and kissed me on the forehead. "Good. Now let's get back to our party." The rest of the evening was magical. We danced, laughed, and celebrated with the people we loved. Diane stayed out of the way, and I started to believe that maybe, just maybe, she was going to let us have our happiness. As the night came to an end, Tom and I stood outside watching the stars. He pulled me close, and I felt an overwhelming sense of peace. "We did it, Danny," he said softly. "We made it through all the drama, and we're here together." "Yeah, we did," I replied, feeling tears of joy welling up in my eyes. "I love you, Tom." "I love you too," he said, kissing me gently. "Here's to our future." We stood there for a while, just holding each other and looking at the stars. No matter what challenges lay ahead, I knew we could face them together. Tom was my rock, and I was his. And with that, we started our new life, ready to take on the world, one day at a time. Bye-bye.